Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. And for those asking why, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
Like Joe and Mika, the same thing. It's like calling him a fascist and calling him saying out how dangerous he is, and then they're running over as fast as they can to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. And it's like, people don't. How are you going to trust that?
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. I am so lucky to have Boston Brian on today. Are we keeping your real name secret today?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even thought about the actual saying my real name on camera yet, so we'll go with the Boston Brian for now.
Well, fans of this show, certainly fans of the Midas Touch Network, are undoubtedly familiar with Brian from his posts on the network, from his 250,000 TikTok followers. Brian, can I be honest with you for a second?
Yeah, I hope you are nothing but.
I got no notes, no agenda. I just knew we'd have an awesome conversation. And man, I want to start with, what the hell do we do about guys like us, men of a certain age, young men especially, who voted the way they did in the last presidential election against the interests of all the people in their lives they actually care about? How do we fix this?
You know, it's one of those questions where there's no single answer, unfortunately. You know, and anybody that tries to give you a simple answer to, you know, what is undoubtedly a complex issue, you should automatically have your wits about you, and the red flag should go up, because, you know, there's no pinning it down as to why somebody would vote a certain way by one thing, as far as I can tell. I have people in my life that are very close to me, that I know are great people, that I know would be there in a heartbeat for me, that I know would be there for other people in a heartbeat. But for some reason, they just have not consumed the media that I have, or haven't really done. I hate the whole do your own research, and haven't done the research, because some people, you need to be qualified to do some research. It's not like, you know, anybody could just hop on and, you know, do your own research about the vaccine or something like that, because unless you know what the hell you're reading and what you're looking at, it doesn't matter. You have to be qualified to do research in some instances anyway. So it's really hard to pin down what made them vote that way. A lot of it, I think, is just simple, you know, distrust and hate for the establishment. As ridiculous as that seems, it's just, you know, I don't like who's in power. I don't feel like my life is going well. I don't feel like the government is helping me right now. And then the Republicans on this side are telling me that not only is the government not helping me, but the money that should be going to me, hypothetically, you know what I mean, is now going to these people. So they're giving the people that are now angry about what they're paying at the grocery store and at the plaza and at the malls when they're buying, you know, Christmas gifts and stuff. They need some frustration. They need somebody to take that out on. And the Republicans did a very good job of giving, you know, people that were frustrated somebody to take their aggression out on, and a finger, you know, somewhere to point their finger at. And it seemed to have the trick. And we didn't. You know, we were talking about a million different things, and I think we relied heavily on what we thought was going to be an overwhelming woman vote, you know, Rovember, and that didn't really pan out. But as you look at it, you know, a lot of people are calling this a mandate for Donald Trump, which is objectively false as we look at the numbers now. So it's basically either a 50-50 split or even less at this point for Donald Trump. So anybody that tells you that Donald Trump has this overwhelming mandate and the whole country supports every single one of his ridiculous agendas, they're blowing smoke. Don't believe them. Look at the numbers. Look at the House. Look at the Senate, and look at the majority and you know, and the numbers in the actual election. So,
yeah, a lot of the scapegoating you refer to is based on disinformation. I think it's undeniable that the economic realities that a lot of people are living in was a major factor in how they voted. But you talk about the Republicans giving them an excuse to exercise their anger about that and direct it towards people whose fault it was not, you know, immigrants, Haitians in Springfield, in my home state of Ohio, right? The Republicans are great at creating scapegoats, at victimizing the most marginalized in our society. And there was this one graphic that was going around that showed just how much more likely you were to vote for Donald Trump if you believed lies about the economy, about immigration, and about crime. And it goes to this theory that this really was an information battle, and that if people actually knew the truth about what Joe Biden had done with the CHIPS Act and everything else, if they knew the truth about the direction inflation was headed, crime was headed, things like that, they never would have picked the the serial
Well, I mean,
rapist.
it used to be, facts don't care about your feelings. This election seemed to prove that it was the feelings don't care about your facts. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
it just everything
yeah,
was reversed. And again, we kind of missed the boat on a lot of things in messaging too, because we kept, propping up the stock market and oh, look at the economy's doing so well because of the stock market. Stock market's hitting record highs. A lot of people don't give a crap about the stock market. They have no investments whatsoever in the stock market. It doesn't affect them. That's not where the majority of the people are looking and living. You know what I mean? There are a few lucky people. There are people with the 401ks and stuff like that absolutely do look at the stock market and care where it is. But a lot of people just aren't as involved, and we kind of get sucked in as creators and as political junkies that we're in it all the time, so we kind of know. But as you go out to the supermarket, people are just la la la. They're just about their daily life. They might see a headline here and there. They might, catch the news for a minute or two, but they're putting food on the table for their kids. They're off to soccer practice. They're coming back and taking their son to hockey. They don't have the time, and they don't spend the time like we do, kind of getting into the ins and outs of this. So it's just kind of, whatever they hear and whatever they hear it, that's kind of what they believe. And again, the newspapers are terrible nowadays, especially where they've turned almost into like clickbait headlines, and then the truth is actually buried somewhere in the fourth paragraph that nobody ever gets down to. So there's a lot of things that we missed. I mean, it's unfortunate. There was a lot of, I think, overconfidence, and people thinking that we kind of had this in the bag because of Donald Trump's actions, because of the policies or not lack thereof that he wanted to put in place. And people just weren't paying attention. Not everybody watches the Trump rallies like we do. Not everybody covers that stuff. You know what I mean? They might see a clip. Like if great example was election night. If anybody was watching TV on election night, they saw the pictures that they were using for Donald Trump. They were back in 2015 pictures, back in 2016 pictures. ABC or Amazon Fire TV had, if you went to the screensaver, it was a little clip they would play about the election, and it was like the 2 seconds in Donald Trump's speech where he says something about America and he says it coherently, and they just kept using that part. And people tend to believe like, oh, he must always sound like that. The whole speech must sound like that. You know what I mean? They're not in it like we are. So it's tough to get across them just how crazy this situation is.
I think you're right to remind us to think about the voter in the grocery checkout line, not reading the news, right? Because it's actually unfair to expect that of most American voters. You and I probably spend 8 hours a day thinking about current events, thinking about politics, thinking about all of Donald Trump's deficits as a leader. But if you got 3 kids, if you're a single mom, or even if you're
Exactly.
not, you got a job and you have the day to deal with it. It shouldn't be a full-time or even a part-time job to understand the truth about our politics. And that is where I think the media is implicated. There has to be a better way to deliver the kind of information that can inform voters without requiring them to spend 8 hours a day like you and I do, parsing everything and separating fact from fiction. And there's not an easy answer here either, but it's
The
something
problem
you
is,
have
I
to
think
deal
we're
with.
trying to resuscitate a dead animal in the media. I really do. It's unfortunate. I mean, take for a great example, Joe and Mika. I
Oh,
mean, how many times did he go and lose his mind on his TV show about Donald Trump being a fascist? He's a threat to democracy. There's a clip going around now where he's at some sort of speech, and he's going 100% at Donald Trump, and I'm going to fight forever, and I'll never back down type of thing. And next thing fast forward to now, and they're running over as fast as they can to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. And it's like, people don't. How are you going to trust that? You know what I mean? It went from the TV show that Biden used to love and Biden used to get up and watch. We all knew Joe Biden watched, and now it's like They went to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring after what they've been saying this whole time. Like, obviously they only care about their position in power and how close they can be to power. It's not about journalistic integrity. They didn't do an interview. I didn't see an interview come out of Mar-a-Lago. They didn't sit down and ask him some tough questions at Mar-a-Lago and then put that out for people to see. No. They went down there for their own personal pleasure, for their own personal sake, for their own personal wealth, and it had nothing to do with the country. And as long as they stay in front of the cameras and Donald Trump's nice and maybe he calls in every once in a while and they get those ratings, then they're all set. You know what I mean? They think where they're going to lose Democrats now, they're going to go pick up Republicans to watch. And it ain't going to happen. I can tell you that, Joe. See you later.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an abdication of responsibility. If your main duty is to your bottom line, then I think you're missing the boat as a journalist. And I think that's one of the failings, the lack of spine, the lack of consistency. I take some pride in the fact that our network is going to stick with its guns. At least you and I are.
There's without a doubt. I mean, there's no other option in my book, as I was explaining to you before we started recording. World War II is my passion. That was my hobby. It was, what I do on the spare time. If I have any spare time, I'm watching. It's funny. I grew up wanting HD TV and 4K. And now that I got 4K, I'm watching black and whites. Makes no sense, but that's what I do. I've watched every documentary, World War II film, book. I mean, anything you could possibly think of, I've sunk my teeth into. And that's what led me to politics. That's what led me to looking at Donald Trump's words and actions and saying, wow, that looks a lot like, the tactics that the Nazis used and Joseph Goebbels used, trying to control the media, saying things 3 times, Russia, 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 Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. I mean, the list goes on and on and on with examples and direct parallels that you can draw between at least the techniques and the propaganda usage the Republicans and Donald Trump have that went on in the 30s and 40s back in Germany. I'm not saying that this man is out for millions of people to die. Honestly, that's what he oversaw in the pandemic already. I'm not saying he wanted that, but we have the chance now where he's talking about rounding up 13 million immigrants. What do you think happens? What do people think happens? Do you think they just kick down the door, take these people, put them on the bus, drive them to the border, and that's it? No. You got to house them somewhere. You got to figure out who they are. You got to figure out why they're being kicked out of the country, where they're supposed to be going. Have they been processed before? That takes time, money, resources, and a place to house these people, which we in this country, normal people would call camps, right? So what do you think? I mean, he may be indirectly walking into the same, repeating the same things history has already seen before without even, because he's so stupid. You know what I mean? He just backed into it somehow.
It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break here to let you know that we'd love to hear from you. Your comments, suggestions, thoughts about future topics and guests. Email us at info@thekenharbaughshow.com. And make sure to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and back to the show. Well, there is one area in which we are living, I think, undeniably in a 1939 moment, and that's the conflict in Ukraine. And you and I didn't plan this, but I know you've got your Ukraine sweatshirt on. I've got my Ukraine t-shirt on because the heat's on here. But look, the parallels are terrifying when you look at 1939 in Europe and the Czechoslovakian decision a year earlier to capitulate, with the whole world selling them out, versus Ukraine today deciding to fight, hoping that the world, at least the free world, has their back. And now we're at a decision point as a country, as the most powerful democracy in the world, as to whether we let this underdog get steamrolled, literally rolled over by tanks, and pull out the rug from under them after Donald Trump comes back into power, or whether we stick up for him. And it, of all the issues in the election, this is the one that has kept me up most at night, because I have friends in Ukraine, some of whom are probably gonna die if we pull out the rug from under them. Man, it's going to forever change the way I think about my country if that's what we choose to do.
I mean, not only is it going to change the way we think about our country, it's going to change the world. I mean, if Russia were to take over Ukraine in totality, what do you think you're now going to be paying for a loaf of bread or pasta? What do you think? Where do you think the grain comes from? Where do you think we get, the majority, or I think the world, the majority of the planet gets their grain from the breadbasket in Ukraine. And it's like, what do you think that will do to your pocketbook? So if you're thinking and voting with your pocketbook, that doesn't seem like a smart choice to me, to vote for somebody that might give Putin the opportunity to take an entire country and then have his own way and his own say on what we pay for goods that we need. You know what I mean? Because we don't grow that. We don't grow enough of it here anymore. You know what I mean? I don't know if we ever did, but I know we don't now. So it's like, not only that, but it does not matter really. And I say this in a different kind of way. It obviously matters what the United States does, but to the Ukrainians, they're going to fight no matter what. Okay, whether we support them, whether we don't support them, whether we send a few dollars, billions of dollars, or no dollars, they are going to continue the fight. They are going to set up a militia. They are going to set up a resistance. They are going to go up into the hills and congregate in mass, and they are going to fight any way they know how. It's I don't understand what people don't get, because any Ukrainian that I've seen interviewed and talked to has said the same exact thing. Putin will never get their hands on me. My life will never be viewed as something, a subject under Vladimir Putin. I will never live under Russia's rule. It's not going to happen. I don't care. Well, I mean, all you have to do is look at the babushkas with the Molotov cocktails when this thing first started. Do you know what I mean? Like, that right there tells you everything. I mean, they're sitting there making literally whatever they possibly can, and they're like, all right, let's go. Here we go. They're not running. They didn't flee. It's remarkable. I mean, this was supposed to be a 72-hour operation, Ken. A 72-hour operation with a one straight line into Kyiv, which was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Anyways, but we're now, almost 3 years into this? I mean, I don't know the exact number of days, but we're getting close. We're definitely getting close to, I mean, and hats off to the Ukrainians, hats off to the Ukrainian military, hats off to the leadership for even, making it this far into the conflict and still having the resolve they have and still having the manpower that they do have, making their way into Kursk. It's amazing. It really is. And we could learn a lot from the Ukrainian resilience, the Ukrainian resistance, if we could translate that into our democratic politics and stop playing patty cake and stop Chuck Schumer sitting with Donald Trump at one of these stupid dinners and laughing at his jokes. And I'm sorry, Ken, but Joe Biden sitting there shaking hands with a fascist in front of a nice roaring fire at the White House. I'm all for peaceful transitions of power, but for your traditions, sorry, I'm out. That's where I draw the line. That's where I draw the line. You cannot sit there and tell me that somebody is an existential threat to democracy, a fascist, a direct threat to women in this country, and then when he wins okay, here he is, smile like you just won the lottery. I'm sorry. Call me out if you want. That might piss some people off, but that's how I feel. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's a stab in the back, and I think that it sends the wrong message to the entire country again. You know what I mean? It makes us look like a joke. It makes us look like, oh, that guy was just, like Joe and Mika. The same thing. It's like calling him a fascist and calling him saying out how dangerous he is, and then automatically going down to Mar-a-Lago. And I know Joe's in the position where he's the president and he kind of has to, walk a fine line. That's why I say peaceful transition, fine. Whatever your team needs, fine. But as far as shaking hands and sitting down in front of a nice roaring fire with a smile on my face, you lose me. Sorry about that. There's way too much at stake. There's way too much going on right now. We need to send the message that this guy cannot be trusted. This guy should not be cowed down to. You know what I mean? We resist at every point. We at every single turn we possibly can, we must fight. Whatever that takes, whatever that means in any regard.
Well, I think that resistance is gonna be a grassroots fight for at least the near term. And of course, when we say that, we both mean emphatically nonviolent, but there are nonviolent ways we can make it very hard for Donald Trump.
The power is with us, Ken. The power is with the people. Like I said, if we use our constitutional right to go out there and peacefully protest, march, and show these people that, look, all it takes is about a week of us not going to work in this country, and these companies will be hurting. Okay, these companies will definitely feel it in their bottom lines. If we don't go to work, the 1%ers don't make their money. The corporations don't make their money. So who makes the power? Who has the power? We do. Somehow they make the money. Somehow they make the money. The CEO's pay has gone up exponentially in the last, 20, 30 years, while the workers' pay has stayed the same. So it's time now to use it. I think we're out of options. We lost the battle at the poll, and now we can only use what we have left, which is our voices and our right to peacefully protest and show our government, we mean business, and that we're not going to stand for Matt Gaetz as AG, Pete Hegseth as SecDef. I mean, some of the most ridiculous people, some of the most comical, ridiculous picks for any cabinet that I've ever seen in my life. It's ridiculous, and it cannot be stood for. We cannot stand for this. We must resist. We must call out every policy that they have is going to hurt people. Every racist comment somebody makes, every threat to withdraw funding from Ukraine. Everything. Call it out at every turn. That's how we win this. We must stay loud. We cannot cower. We cannot sit there silently. And I'm glad that people are on Bluesky, and I'm glad people are finally decided to get off of X, to stop giving Elon our money, our time, and our attention, so that he can make ad revenue off that. Bluesky is a good home. It's a good place for us to get our ideas together, to regroup after the election. That way we can, make sure we don't make the same mistakes, and that we have a good plan going forward to make sure that, this doesn't happen again, and we can take it back in the midterms at least.
Well, Brian, we'll put your Bluesky handle in the show notes. You're a true Renaissance man, from the World War II expertise to your daily rants. I never get enough. Thanks so much for coming on, Brian. Actually, we're going to walk you out with this clip from Ukraine, the bravest people I have ever met in my life. I may walk out with two, because there was this one interview I did on a rooftop outside Kyiv with a gun crew captain whose call sign was Judge. Have I shared this story with you yet?
I have not. No.
This guy's call sign was Judge, and I asked him why. I knew the backstory, but I wanted to hear it from him. He was a justice, still is a justice on the Ukrainian Supreme Court. And at night, he mans a gun crew outside Kyiv shooting down drones. And on the first day of the war, he grabbed an AK-47 from the police armory, got a couple of his buddies from the Ukrainian Supreme Court, and ran to the front to fight off the Russians. And it just made me think of Clarence Thomas or John Roberts grabbing an AR-15 to defend their country. I don't see it happening in Ukraine. It's just daily life. It's their story every damn day. This clip we're going to send you out with is of a mine clearing crew in Kherson trying to get their farmers back in the fields. Thanks, Brian, for coming on. Let's do it again soon.
Appreciate your time, Ken.
I'm with the Ukrainian demining crew. They are behind me, walking through the field, continuing their clearing of this area. We're in Kherson Oblast, which the Russians occupied for 9 months. And when they laid mines, they didn't do it tactically. They didn't do it to prevent the advance of Ukrainian troops. They did it often out of spite, to kill innocent Ukrainian civilians, farmers, to disrupt Ukrainian agriculture. And the efforts of these deminers, even though they might not be on the front lines in the trenches of the war against Russia, they are some of the bravest people in Ukraine today. One of their standard operating procedures, just to give you a sense of how dangerous their work is to have an ambulance nearby assigned to every demining crew, because if they get hurt, and it happens, they need help quickly if they're going to survive.